YouTube? Welcome back to 6.5 Reviews. Today we're going to talk about the CForce 600. It's going to be our 3-year review on the machine, and we're going to talk about do we have any regrets or not with it. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. I hope you enjoy the video. CForce 600. We bought this machine the end of 2019, end of the summer of 2019. It is a 2020 model. We've got just over 450 miles on this machine. So we've had it for 3 years. We've put it through the paces. If you've watched my review on the UForce, you kind of already know where I stand on this machine. But I had never heard of CFMOTO before buying this machine. We went to the dealership planning on getting a Polaris 570. Once we lined them all up and my wife drove them all around in the parking lot, we drove Polaris 570. It did not have electronic power steering. A Honda Rancher, the 600, and then the older style of the 500. We both fell in love with this machine, but I knew nothing about it. We did a little research. The salesman was pretty knowledgeable on it. Apparently CFMOTO's been around for quite some time. They're actually paired up with KTM. If you don't know much about them, do a little bit of research. Don't just discard them because they aren't Honda, they're not Polaris, they're not Can-Am. This machine has been with us, like I said, for 3 years now. Really the only thing that I've had to change on it is the oil and the battery. We have put it through its paces. I plow with it every winter. Our driveway is an asphalt mix, so we plow from the barn out to the garage, around the garage, back up through the garage, and all the way out to the road. Really not struggled with pushing snow or anything on the performance end of this machine. It could use maybe a little bit of weight, but other than that, I could put a plow on that. I just like the maneuverability of this one, being able to get into tighter spots. I can back up closer and I can look right over the back and see how close I get to the garage door. The machine's extremely comfortable. The sizing is right for just about everybody. The seat's extremely comfortable. The suspension is tuned very well. That is one thing that I was not expecting, is that once you start speeding up, you can cruise down the trails and just float over everything. And it's been extremely reliable for us. So I replaced the battery. Actually, right when we bought this machine, we had mentioned selling this machine a little bit too close to this machine, and it hurt us, and so the battery went out on it. Aside from that, we put the battery in, decided we were going to keep it because it's a lot easier to chase my son around on his 110 than it is to chase around in the side-by-side. The workable part of this thing, so with using, the yard roller, with using the sweeper and all that stuff, I still choose to use this over the side-by-side, even down to the plowing snow. I'm not going to buy a plow for this machine this year, just because this is a lot easier to maneuver, to see, to be able to look and back up over a hitch. Plus our roller, is just a little bit wider than the machine itself, so I'm not overlapping tire marks that I would be with a side-by-side. Each machine kind of has its own purpose here. We have 5 acres, we have goats, chickens, we do have a little hobby farm and everything. After we fell in love with this machine, there was a couple things that stood out to us on why we didn't pick the Polaris and why we did decide to go with the CForce. A big one was power steering. I'd never experienced it on a machine before. On my older Polaris, I didn't have power steering. I could never go back to a machine without power steering. It is insane, especially with plowing snow, how much easier it is to just, you can one hand plow snow, you can cruise around in the back, you can slide this thing with one hand. There's no problem maneuvering it. Also, the winch was included. We've used that a ton. There's actually a lot of little hidden storage compartments on this thing. It does have USB drives if you want to put a GPS on here, or even plug your phone into a unit and have it up for GPS for when you're out on the trails. And then price. Price was a big factor. I have for 2023 now, it's at $7,200. That's MSRP. You'll still have assembly, shipping, tax, title, all that good stuff. Compared to, I looked up a 2023 Polaris, just the electronic power steering. So you're still going to have steel wheels. You're still going to have just the baseline Sportsman 570 with power steering, is at $92. If you get the Trail Command, which puts pretty similar to this, aside from I do believe it has a different trans feature for the Trail Commander, that's at $12,399. So, I mean, there's a huge cost difference between this and the other ones. And like I said, we're at 3 years, 450 miles on it. Looking back now, I have zero regrets on getting this over a Polaris. There hasn't been one time that I've rode this and thought to myself, man, I wish I had the other machine. This machine was the first year for them to put the plastic racks onto them. And I'd never seen it before, so I was a little bit leery at first versus the steel with the edge all the way around it that I'm used to. I'm extremely happy with it. When we went hunting down in Ohio, we were in the Appalachian Mountains, and I could mount this thing with all of our gear, corn, stands, everything, and cruise through the hills without a problem. We've got plenty of locations to strap to. Now, when this machine came out, they didn't have any of the lock-in features yet. They have a ton of accessories for these things now, including the bow and gun mounts. They actually make ones that lock right in. I just happened to buy these before, and I'm not going to switch them out now. But it's extremely clean. We did have a Cabela's saddlebag back here, and then I had a piece of plywood with a seat that fit in the middle so that my wife could sit back here, I sat here, and my son sat here. Now that we have that, that's all gone, and this is kind of the way that it'll be set up for the future. Another big selling feature to me was EFI. I'm kind of well over playing with carburetors and having to tune and everything. Just being able to do that. Like I said, the power steering is just like, you can see also you have really nice gauge cluster. There you go. And then that also, so you have four-wheel drive, and then you switch over and you have your front diff lock. And that'll flash and tell you as well. The other side you have winch controller. You have a black lab. Start, kill switch, headlights, which is another thing we should look at. Horn. It does come from the factory with the knuckle guards. I've added the mirror on and the mud. But aside from that, I mean, you got a little glove storage compartment. You have USB 12 volt, USB shifter on that side. It does have a key lock if you want to lock it from, your kids hopping onto it or something like that. Extremely nice LED headlights. So you've got running lights and really bright LED lights, as well as the tail lights on it. Are extremely clear. It does have reverse lights too, which was a nice deal for hooking up trailers in the evening. Back here you have another storage compartment, which is actually fairly large for an ATV, and it is sealed and watertight. The raised pegs on the floorboard have been extremely nice, especially once you do get this thing coated in mud. You're pretty well stuck to it. I haven't had any issues of sliding off of it or anything. We touched briefly on handling, and yes, it doesn't have top of the line piggyback coilover shocks or anything like that. But again, they handle extremely well. I can slide around on our trails, no problem. Crank it up to full speed. And I've never felt like I'm gonna tip over or lose control of this machine in any way, shape, or form. If you're looking for something that's really good for trail riding or cruising around, if you watch my opening videos where there's a side shot of me I don't have that phone mounted to my helmet. I'm actually just holding it and I ride my whole loop one-handed. It is extremely easy to maneuver. You're not going to be beat up if you want to go cruise on some trails for a nice long day. The suspension's smooth, the steering is extremely responsive. You don't get any kickback, you're not getting any arm pump or anything along those lines of if you want to just cruise all day. One thing with that, the rear axle is locked. So when it comes to doing yard work, I do have a little issue if I want to make a tight turn. That inside tire will start chewing up the dirt versus that one has more of a posi track style rear end that it'll engage when it's slipping. So that's one downside, is that you don't have a turf mode. I know some of the companies call it, but for playing and everything along those lines, this setup is actually perfect. One complaint I'll have, and I mean it's pretty simple because a lot of people do switch out the tires anyways, I haven't really found these to be the best tire to come on a machine. I would have rather had more of a tread pattern along those lines or like a whole shot or something, but they're decent. Obviously, I mean, I've run them for 450 miles and still haven't switched them out, but they are not my top pick for a tire. They've kind of started to wear and like a chopping, everything is kind of looping back in and out of them. So that would be one thing that maybe moving forward in the future I'll change. And the 2023, I believe, does have those tires on it over those. And then also the winch, I do wish that it was a synthetic rope, because this is the one you can even see if I get real close. There's a couple frays there. I've caught my hand on it before and it's pretty painful while you're doing it. And then probably the biggest problem that I found was the shifter on this machine. We did have problems getting it into park or getting into low range. I did adjust the linkage and it's been fine since then. I don't know if you can really get a view of it. So it's from here and then it runs all the way up and behind. Now to get to that, they say that you need to remove one piece of plastic, but you got to realize that this is all one piece of plastic basically. Everything is connected, so you got to pull off this piece, which is connected to this piece, which is connected to this piece. I did find that I can remove here and like really reach up now that I know what I'm looking for and get to the crush nut that's back there. I adjusted it once, put it all back together, thinking I had it fixed, and I should have left it apart and actually drove it. The second time I got it to where now, I mean, it's flawless through all the gears. I haven't had an issue with it popping out of low or going into any other gear like that. So you might need to tweak it a little bit. You can actually, even ask your dealer to do it before you take it home. I would actually, on the lot, go through the gears a bunch of times and ensure that it's working before you accept delivery of it. And if not, tell them to adjust the linkage. One thing I didn't mention is it does have CV Tech clutches in it, which have been great to us. I know a lot of people have mentioned switching out the clutch packs when they go up in tire size, depending on what they want to do for it. It does run a little bit higher RPMs when you're going around 15, 20 miles an hour kind of a thing, which has been fine for us around here just for what I've used it for on the work end of it. I would rather be more up into that power band range. We've towed our 20-foot car hauler that we've since sold, but I used to take it all the way around our property and park it behind the barn. That trailer was 1,800 pounds unloaded, and this machine had no problem moving it around. So 3 years, 450 miles. Do we regret it? Not even in the slightest bit. This machine has been great to us, and if you haven't already gone and checked out CFMOTO, at least do a little bit of research online, but I would definitely recommend going to your local shop, sitting on one, driving one, seeing what you think personally. Is it a Can-Am mud machine? Probably not. Is it a Honda true work machine? Probably not. It has a belt-driven versus a gear-driven transmission. This is kind of right in the middle where you want to be at if you're not a huge farmer or you're not a huge mud bogger. And I know people are putting lifts on these and bigger tires. I can't speak for experience because I haven't had it up to here in water. I've had it up to here in water, and I had no problems. But if you want to go trail ride, if you want to be able to work around your house with it, if you want to even just be able to cruise up and down the dirt roads and stuff like that, this is a great option for you to not go bankrupt doing it. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. If you're looking for a dog-friendly machine, Pepper here definitely likes the CForce 600. So if you could give us a like, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thank you.